Hi, so I wanted to make a video about INFPs in leadership roles and how oftentimes I feel that INFPs end up in these positions on accident. We stumble into these things, or if it's almost by default, and how INFPs can maybe better develop skills that would be useful when we find ourselves in those types of positions at work or in other areas of our life. So yeah, that's what I'm going to talk about today. So obviously INFPs, if we have a choice, I don't think that most of us would choose to be, a manager or a supervisor or anything like that. We kind of prefer to just hang back and do our own thing and be responsible for our own stuff. But if you have a job, oftentimes at some point or another, you'll find yourself in a situation where you need to take some responsibility for other people, whether it's just training a new person or, even being in charge of a department or something like that. So for me, what's been really helpful, just in general, in terms of developing my social skills, has been working with the public. I've worked with the general public for over 10 years in a few different jobs, and I honestly would recommend that to all INFPs, especially because it's really easy for us to just kind of get wrapped up in our shells and not want to deal with the outside world. But I think that having a job where you don't know who's going to walk through the door and who you're going to have to deal with next, and or what kind of problem there might be, I think it's been really, really helpful to me to have a job where I have to do that every day. Because when I was in school, I was very, very shy, and it wasn't even that I was just introverted. I was just shy. I was really a wallflower. I was just kind of on the outside of a few different social circles. I didn't really have a group, which is kind of sad, but that's okay. And I feel like that's maybe common with INFPs, obviously. But since I've had a job where I work the public, I've worked in various retail jobs. I've learned very well how to deal with all different kinds of people. Because like I said, you never know what you're going to have to deal with next. And if you work in retail, you know that you've never seen everything. And to never tell yourself that, because if you tell yourself that you've seen everything, you're just summoning a strange situation from the universe. So that would be something that I would recommend to all INFPs in general, is just get a job where you have to work with the general public and work with lots of different people every day. And it will do wonders to help with your social skills and to help you come out of your shell, even if it feels a little bit unnatural, because it still feels unnatural for me sometimes. But it has helped a lot. And in a couple of those jobs, I was in a kind of a quasi leadership role, where I was, kind of training people sometimes, and if you're an INFP, I think sometimes you just want to, remain in the background, which is what I want to do. I don't really want all the recognition and everything that comes with being a manager. I don't want that. I don't want to be in management, but it was kind of something that I stumbled into because it was necessary, kind of because it was the right thing to do, for me and for the people that I work with, who I had really strong bonds with a lot of them, and so there wasn't really I felt like I had to do it, and I feel like if you're an INFP, that should be kind of your main motivation for taking on a leadership role, is that you feel strongly that it's the right thing to do, because that's kind of our primary motivation as INFPs, is that you feel good about whatever it is that you're going to do. And so what I did in the beginning, when I was still new at that, I just kind of tried to mimic whatever I had seen actual managers do, and not necessarily do exactly what they had done, but do it in a way that felt authentic for me, and that if if it's coming from me, it seems right. And essentially that meant for me is either act like an ESTJ or act like an ENFJ, depending on the situation. If I was, let's say, dealing with a customer who wanted to return an item, and there's no receipt or no proof of purchase or anything like that, act like an ESTJ. What would an ESTJ do in this situation? They would say, no, these are the rules. We're not going to do this. Sorry, have a good day. But say it in a nice customer service way. And if I were training somebody who's new and maybe a little bit unsure of themselves, which I definitely was when I first started, I can see a lot of myself in, new people who start, especially if they're really young. I would act like an ENFJ. And I've learned how to develop kind of an extroverted feeling because I've spent so many years in customer service roles. So I would take on kind of an actual teaching role when I'm going through everything with them, and making sure that they understand, and that if they have a question, just ask, and there's no stupid questions and things like this. So it's almost as if I have different personas that I would go into, depending on the situation, what it called for. And I know that sometimes INFPs, they feel like that's being fake, and I completely understand that. But I've kind of viewed it as this is just a different facet of my personality. And I think in general, it's good to just expand your horizons, and maybe even if it helps to think about being in character for some people, maybe that would help. So yeah, that would be my main tips for INFPs, kind of developing leadership skills and social skills in general. Just get a job working with the general public, because it will help, I promise. Because it's really sink or swim. And I've noticed that INFPs, on a grander scale than just working in retail, it's almost as if they stumble into these. It's not even a leadership role sometimes, it's just what they represent. And it's like they're the de facto icon for certain ideas, or certain, I don't even know, ideologies, stuff like that. So for example, George Orwell, he's kind of he represents kind of the resistance against Big Brother and against the police state, and it's oftentimes, his work is oftentimes people's first experience with the surveillance state and Big Brother and oppressive governments. Even though it's works of fiction, it's becoming increasingly easy to see it in the real world, and especially this last year, it's just been one thing after another. And I don't think it was George Orwell's intent to kind of become this icon of the resistance, I guess. It wasn't his intention, and that's what it's become. So it's like we stumble into these things just because whatever it is that we're dealing with, it's a very strong internal feeling and motivation. And I think that being authentic and true to yourself, no matter what it is, I think that's an attractive trait to a lot of people, even if they're not INFPs or if they don't have higher FI. They can recognize when somebody's being their full authentic selves and if something is truly meaningful to them. And that's really attractive. And I think that that maybe is how INFPs just kind of stumble into these things. Just on a grander scale with George Orwell, like I said, or in the music world, somebody like Kurt Cobain, he represents grunge, essentially. And he's kind of king of the INFPs. I've read people describe him as that. And I think that's fairly accurate. But was that his intent, to become the most prominent man in grunge and who most people think about if you say the word grunge? No, absolutely not. He was just doing what he felt was an expression of himself and what he felt he needed to do and what he was passionate about. And that's, I think, why Nirvana was so successful, is that people recognize that. And it's kind of a rare thing to have somebody just be their full authentic selves and be able to express it in such a unique way, and then it speaks to a lot of people. So it's kind of what draws people to INFPs and what sometimes ends up leading them to be kind of, to have a cult following, I guess. So that's kind of what I wanted to mainly talk about, is on a smaller scale. If you work with the general public and get a job in retail, that will do amazing things to your social skills and help you come out of your shell if you're one of those really introverted INFPs and shy INFPs like I was. And that will help you to develop leadership skills, whether or not you have an official role or not. And sometimes I feel like INFPs, if they have an unofficial role, that's even better for us. Because I feel like in the coming months and years, we will need INFPs and ENFPs to kind of become representations of the resistance in the same way that George Orwell has. I think that we'll need INFPs and ENFPs to rise to the occasion. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about. But even on your own, in your own personal life, just remember that you can have a really big impact on people whether or not you realize it. And that can be a really powerful thing. So yeah, so thanks for watching. Any questions, comments, or concerns, just leave a comment. I would love to hear about it. So thanks again for watching, and I hope you have a good day.